Welcome to the Enterprise Thought Leadership Podcast, where we explore the latest in enterprise trends, tech, and strategy with the top leaders shaping the future.
Hi, welcome to our podcast On Stage with Enterprise Thought Leaders. My name is Kanika and I'm the managing editor of TalkMarTech, which is our enterprise marketing technologies platform. We have engaging conversations with global thought leaders and industry experts that reach over 1.3 million business leaders worldwide. The old content strategy playbook of just publish more is dead. With AI dominating search and zero-click results becoming the norm, a vast library of content isn't an asset, it's a liability. If a site is filled with outdated or irrelevant information, AI models can pull the wrong data, actively misrepresenting the brand to millions of users. What does this mean for marketers? About this today, we speak with Dominik Angerer. He's the CEO and co-founder of Storyblok. And the topic is going to be the death of the old content strategy playbook of just publish more and what's ahead. Hi, Dominik. Really welcome to you. It's not a subject we discuss very often, so it's great to have you with us here on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kanika.
A little bit about Dominik before we start. He is the CEO and co-founder of Storyblok, one of the fastest growing companies founded in Europe. Before establishing the company in 2017, he built a strong background as a full stack developer and web performance specialist, working with major agencies. He's also an active contributor to the open source community. And there was a mention of a community which I cannot pronounce properly, so I didn't put it. Would you like to add it here?
I guess it's the conference we organized back in 2018-19. It was ScriptConf.
That is right. So thank you for letting us know that. So it's really nice to have you. Now, the first question is, there's a time when a vast library of content was an asset, and we have seen that time was just a couple of years ago, but it's changing very fast. What does it mean to the users of AI tools for marketing today? Not having that library, but having rich content, which is probably more relevant for marketing. And what does this mean for marketers? How can they use it better? How can they sell their product better using that?
Yeah, so the main thing that everybody that is currently producing content needs to think about is the content that is currently out there actually still relevant? And do they have the confidence to actually tell everybody that the content that is out there is still on brand, is still on tone, is still having the same right details as the new content being published? Because what is happening right now, we can see that the LLMs that are out there, they're crawling all the different websites, all the different content pieces. And what they're doing is they're trying to get statistical relevance amount of content, so they can then divert the right answers to all the users that have prompts directly within ChatGPT or Perplexity and similar. And the problem is, if you have 7, 10, 50, 100 different articles that are all about the same subject, but slightly different tone, slightly different objective of the article itself, and even maybe some details switch because they're outdated in the old articles versus the new ones, the LLM has no statistical relevance immediately available, and therefore the output will be way, way worse. So right now, the shift is going to happen from a vast variety of different content pieces and a lot of assets and a lot of content itself towards high quality pieces of content that are accurate and actually get updated over time. And that's the shift. And AI tools are using statistically relevant content. So the problem of having different content management system, as an example, where you have 5 different CMSs for 5 different publications, 5 different outlets. This is actually a big problem because you are operating in different silos where you, again, have more and more content that is not joined together, that is not reusing content, that maybe has a completely different tone. And suddenly you're creating your own competition and you get downranked directly in the whole AI tooling kind of sphere. But if you would have one solution, one content like repository, one confident kind of place where headless content management system come in, where it's purely data-based, purely API-based, you can power all these different outlets just from one solution. And suddenly you have a proper place where you manage it once and publish it anywhere and have confidence that it's the same across different channels. And that's the switch that we see right now. Away from a huge amount of content that is outdated and not on brand anymore, towards one solution where you manage it and then have all your assets, all your content in one place, highest quality, always on brand.
So would it be correct to say that the internet now rewards teams that do less but do it better? And yes,
100%.
then yes. So would you be able to share a use case of this argument? Any of your companies or brands that you worked with, or anything else that comes to mind?
We can actually share our own story of our rebranding earlier this year. So we had the first rebranding of Storyblok for a long time, not from a naming perspective, but for how we want to be perceived in the market. And the number one thing that we saw back it was September and November, September until November last year, was that people if they search for Storyblok within an LLM, they get a really nice overview of the technical setup of like a headless content management system that we have one of the highest performance when it comes to API-driven development and many other aspects. But we wanted to actually deliver the actual meaning and the feeling you get when you use Storyblok, because it's not just for developers. And we have marketers and developers both really operate with Storyblok. And we started calling it Joyful Headless. It's about bringing joy back to content management, because it should not be just a content graveyard, because many CMSs are that. And in the beginning of this year, we started to adjust all of our articles, all of our content pieces, down to even our documentation. The documentation was now launched about 1.5 months ago. And like the change in how our tone or brand itself was perceived is now consistent across those different channels and different articles, different places we published it. And turns out the moment we started being consistent, when you're now searching for headless content management system that actually helps your marketing team and developers, will suddenly be always on number one rank when it comes to LLMs and prompts that might be asked in that regard. And it's really, really nice, because the consistency itself not only gives a proper confidence towards buyers out there that see the same price, they see the same information, they see the same features, the same arguments across different channels and get reassurance, and they're not getting confused. And that's the same thing how you can think of how LLMs operate. If they see the same thing over and over and over and over again, what happens is that they understand, oh, this is actual meaningful data, and therefore I'm allowed to put it out there. But if they have 10 different places, 10 different information, 10 different prices, 10 different everything, they're hallucinating because they don't have enough information that is valid, that is same kind of level, that is same confidence. So it changes. And that's where I believe we have a huge success story, because our revenue is up big time, our pipeline literally 10x. And you can see that directly within our own setup. And our customers seeing the same results. So I believe that's a really nice case study in itself.
So you've told me that content has to be relevant in a nutshell, and among other things. How would you define this relevance? And also, going a bit beyond that, I would like to have some inputs from you on what should one focus on as great content, which is extremely searchable in 2026. There are new AI tools coming in, so
number one thing,
what would you recommend?
I would start to not even think about creating content, but who you're creating content for. And the number one thing you need to nail down is your ICP, your ideal customer profile. If you don't start there, you will 100% have a problem, because you will just publish more and more spam. And in the current age, we can all see it. There's so much AI slop out there that you can generate articles and you can generate something around any topic in seconds and even have a nice teaser image on top. But that's not what you actually need and should be doing. You need to understand your audience. You need to understand the ICP that you're driving to really enjoy moving into a buyer's journey, essentially, if you're selling a product. So first, nail your ICP. Do an analysis of your current customer base. Who are the ones that actually help you most when it comes to driving business? And try to narrow it down and focus down to these ICPs that you have. Might be 1, 2, 3 different industries, maybe even 5, but don't go overboard and have 50 different industries. That's not an ICP. That's just a pool of information. So narrow it down. And then think about the personas within those different industries. Because for us, as an example, it's developers and marketers that need to work together. Because you have the design outlets where you have your website, you have your mobile application, you have different toolings that you might want to use in between. And then you have one content repository that is a CMS that needs to be connected through developers that build those sites, that build those applications. And that's what we are trying to really narrow it down on Storyblok, one ICP with different industries, and then define the personas and the messaging we want to have for each of them. And then we started writing articles and content. And that's how I believe people should approach it. If you know your audience and the industry, you can suddenly use way better examples. You can use way better, even words that they use on the day-to-day business. And then you can drive emotional stories around the topic, how marketers, in our example, operate with developers, and it's often in silos, and how you can actually bridge that gap, because that's what Storyblok is doing. And that's how you need to think about your content strategy. Don't start with a list of articles. Start with who you're writing it for. Then start, what is the pain that they are having right now? Talk to them. Literally, it's so easy. You can just write them on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm not trying to sell you something. Do you have 10 minutes? I would love to understand your current pain points in that topic that you're investigating. People are so open. They write you back immediately. Maybe it takes like 1 hour or so, but it's really nice because they're really writing you back. And then you can start thinking about your content strategy. Come up with a campaign house. There's a really nice like framework around how you can build up your own campaign house around the different ICPs that you selected. And then you can really start writing the content as part of a big campaign and not as an isolated piece, because everything you do needs to be consistent across all the different outlets that you have, consistent across all the different ICPs that you have. And at the end, you are telling a story that doesn't just end with the last word of the article. It starts way beyond. It starts on your landing page. It starts on the way that they are observing like your content, the way that they are seeing it on social media, and later on how you retarget it later. And you need to have a consistent flow, and you need to start thinking about that from the ICP down to the last word of your article. And you cannot do that with multiple different tools because it starts to get fragmented and you have no idea where you already published content and maybe you didn't. And you need to get that sorted. And that's the argument I would make, that if you have multiple different tools, if you have multiple different fragmented pieces and you want to write more and more and more content, you most likely like go away from the people you actually want to write content for. So focus down on the ICP, on the personas, then write your content. Not a lot of it, just the content that actually makes sense to write about, and publish it and keep it up to date and make progress on top of them. Ask customers about feedback on those articles. Ask them what they're missing. Ask them if they have any questions, and create proper FAQs, not just a 2-line FAQ, but a proper one that explains the reasonings and the why. So when an LLM is crawling that information, that they also can form a proper answer for your customers.
Extremely insightful inputs. I wouldn't have even asked this question, but it just occurred to my teammate here. So completely agree with you, but there is a small doubt, and I'm a layman. I'm not a marketing technology expert at all. But a year ago, when we were searching for, when we use keywords, Google was doing the search for us. Now it is AI search engines. How does one stay optimized for that part of the search to use that?
100%. So right now, the way most LLM works, they literally use the search results of Google and then try to like digest the content itself and get the list from there. And then you have your whole LLM basically set up. Then now going into like the sphere of GEO, what is happening right now is that the formula of how like a response and an answer is created has shifted, because as you said, right now the last 15 years, everybody's goal was to be always on number one on Google. Either we pay our way up or we create content that is not just relevant for this one audience, but for many different audiences. And then we create some form of confidence for Google to put us up there. And that is still the way to go. You still need to create the content, but you need to stay within a certain branding, because what Google has done in the past, once the article has been outdated, they just removed it, because it's just not relevant anymore. If the bounce rate was too high, they just degraded it and was buried in the 6th or 7th page. And for you as a marketer or the marketing audience listening to it, it was not a problem, because, oh yeah, it just died and I created another article. And I'd never had to clean house. I never had to remove that article because it was buried in the 7th or 8th kind of page of Google. But right now, this content is actually hurting people, and that's the change. So there are tools like AI that you can actually purchase through Storyblok that does GEO analysis, where you can have certain prompts engineered for you based on who you are, based on your ICP, based on the persona that you're having, and create prompts that are tracked over time. So you have a baseline. If you start tracking right now, you can create your baseline. And the moment you start adapting to a more, I would say, confident content layer, where you would say, okay, I know what's published. Everything is on brand. I know it's the correct information across all the different channels. You will see that occurrence of mentionings, occurrence of listings actually go up directly within tools like AI. And that's the big shift. So the shift is clean your house, because it's hurting you now, and start creating content that is meaningful for your audience at a higher quality, because that's what we also see in our own drafts. The more we do that, the more mentioning we get within AI tools, and the more mentioning we get within the different outlets in the answers that are appearing. And it's no longer about just being a number one in Google. It's still relevant right now, but over time, it's more important, because there's actually about 58% I believe 58% was it, where all the Google searches actually end with no clicks. And the reason for that is because even Google right now has an AI summary. So if you're not in the AI summary, you're not there, you're invisible. And that's a big shift. You need to still be relevant for Google, but not just on the search results, but also in the answer that is given on top. And that's what you need to influence.
That's really interesting, and that's something we can do in our own publications as well. So I'll make a note of that. So AI models can pull the wrong data sometimes, which can actively misrepresent the brand to millions of users who are looking for them. What should CMOs be careful about? Marketing leads with when because of those these AI models in their search parameters to avoid the situation of being misrepresented to their markets.
Yeah. I mean, there are 3 points I would give as an advice here. Number 1, do your own housekeeping. I mentioned that now about 2 to 3 times in the last 10 minutes, but it's the number 1 thing, the one with the highest impact. Not only because LLMs will stop crawling this information, but also because it will no longer be quoted and referenced somewhere else on different pages, on different outlets that might try to find like a proper quote from somewhere. So the more you remove your old outdated content or adapt it to fit your new branding, your new tone, the new message you want to actually perceive and put out there, that's number 1 thing. So that's the first. The second thing you need to watch out for is, are there other places, outdated places that are no longer managed by your team and actually run by somebody else, where they are still outdated content? One of the things, for example, is certainly competitor comparison tables. The content that is there might not actually reflect the reality. So you now need to start actually thinking about, is it accurate what they are writing there? If not, how do I go about it? Do I actually go and contact them about it and see that they either remove me or actually have an accurate kind of representation? And do I actually need to take legal steps if they are not actually complying with it? Because it's some form of defacement at the end. So that's the second one. The third one is, public communities are getting way more important than many CMOs out there are thinking. So everything around Reddit, Stack Overflow in the developer community on our side, but also other forums are getting crawled even more and more and more. And there was a big dump now, basically in the last couple of months, where Reddit got less and less important within LLMs. That's what we can see in some of the statistics from AI and other tools like that. But in the last 2 weeks, it's now ramping up again, that the relevance of the answers and questions there getting more and more relevance again. And that's the interesting piece, I would say. Like, it's not just your site that needs to be on tone and on voice, but if you have support out there in those different channels, they also need to write in the same way. If you have old comments there, old answers there, update them, because they're still your content. It's still answers to your users. So it's not just ending at your own CMS. It's not just standing or ending at, I would say, your own publishing. It's a full business transformation in getting confidence in the content your team has put out there in all different outlets.
So my last question was, could you offer some practical steps? But I think you've already been giving us practical steps and practical advice, which is like already there as a part. But do you have anything more to offer?
I believe so. I mean, the number 1 thing that many are struggling right now is, how do I actually know if the things that I'm doing are the right things? And the problem is that not many systems out there right now give you the confidence or some way of understanding your current baseline, because it's a new market, it's a new AI content era. And no matter which tool you choose to like make your changes in the content, the one thing I would highly recommend customers and people out there right now is get an GEO tool in place, with literally a GEO tool, not an SEO tool, but a GEO tool, and really start tracking your current situation. It's not about changing something right now because you don't know if it will work or not. You need to have a fundamental understanding first. And I mentioned AI a couple of times because we partnered with them on we have many occasions, and by now also through a proper reselling agreement that you can use for Storyblok. But the number 1 thing, and you can go to other tools as well, get your baseline in. You need to understand where you are right now when it comes to discoverability and observability within LLMs. If you don't have the baseline, any change you're doing is literally flying completely without windows open. And you would not drive a car with closed eyes. So please get a tool in place to at least open your eyes and see what you're doing. And then you can see the progress if you're actually getting more mentioned or less mentions if you apply changes. But this is a complete change where content is suddenly on the same level of importance of data. And the companies that get that, they will succeed. The companies that don't get it and still have those skeletons in the closet for the next couple of years, they're going to lose against their competitors because they are not stopping. They're not waiting. They're already doing it right now because we saw them at TroyConf, at our conference that we had now in LA, in New York, and Amsterdam. And like, there's so many customers and even prospects coming, asking the right questions and already doing it. And most likely one of your competitors or one of the competitors of the listeners is already there and trying to understand how they can optimize it. So they need to also step up and do the same thing and really understand where they are with Geo right now. What are the changes? Are they still confident in their content? If so, why are they confident? Are they actually, or are they just pretending to be? So that would be my advice. Literally get your audits in place, get your data in place, get your information in place, and then start progressively changing, adapting your content over time.
So I have one more question, and it's just out of curiosity. If you already have an established SEO focused plan for which we have writers who are doing content, who are thinking a certain way, writing a certain way, even if they have the ICP clear, the entire style of writing has to be different if it has to be GEO specific. So how does one make the changeover? For us, for instance, we have 7 platforms and we don't know how to move ahead to, get better at being searched. So what is it that you would suggest for us to do to be able to, move over into a slightly more actively searchable status?
Yeah, if you have multiple places, the number one thing I would recommend you to do is to find a partner that can support you on the content architecture modeling. So we do have about 260 registered partners at Storyblok, many of them on platinum and gold level. I would highly recommend to check them out and have a proper discovery session with them. Most of our partners really get down with your system, try to understand your current setup, try to understand the technology that you're using, and if there's an opportunity to increase your speed of the delivery as well, because that's still important. It saves money over time, not just for you, but also for the LLMs out there and even for Google. So that's the first thing I would start to do, start to understand the current architecture and landscape. And the second thing is I would try to understand the content that is currently published on 7 different outlets. Does it have to be 7 different outlets? What is the reason for that? Is it a business reason? Is it a confidence reason? Is it a reason that multiple different brands were launched over time and there was not one place where you could manage it? So it might make sense to remove old content and redirect them to new places, and then might create all in one new place where then you have a larger impact on the audience, because suddenly your domain is like one and you have just one really high level kind of confidence, even towards an LLM and different other places. Otherwise, if you write towards the same audience, if you write towards the same style, if you're writing about the same topics on 7 different places that are not connected with each other, you're creating your own competition. So you really need to think about how you want to do that. So I would recommend going with a partner. They have individually like the best place and the best approach to really tackle it for you. From a system perspective, I would highly recommend to look into the Headless content management system approach. Why? Because it's one place where you manage all your content for all the different platforms you might want to use. And then you have an API, which is like an interface for developers to pull that data and pull that information, that content in a pure structured way to then display it on the different occasions where you need it. But it's still one place and you can create consistency in one place and not have 7 different installs with different systems, different plugins, different setups. So it's just one place.
This is extremely informative, and I have to confess my questions were not halfway there, and you have given us so much more information. I have to thank you so much for your time, Dominik. Supremely interesting conversation. My producer is sitting here and he's also very interested, and we're just wondering if we can use some of those things for our own standards. But what you're saying is right. Getting a good partner is a very critical part of it. So
100%.
Yes. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you for joining us for the Enterprise Thought Leadership Podcast. Please do follow us on social media and subscribe for more ideas and insights. Until next time.